Hi, I'm Tony Taste from Lupus Hope, and I wanted to make for you today gluten-free vegan crumb cake muffins. I'm going to start with a flat gluten-free flour mix first. Right now I had put in 2 cups of brown rice flour that's super fine from Authentic Foods, potato starch, and with that you need a half plus a sixth of a cup. And then it says you can use tapioca starch. I prefer arrowroot. The taste of tapioca sometimes to me can be bitter. So a third of a cup of arrowroot or tapioca starch, whichever you prefer. Alright, and then you just sift these together, and that would be the gluten-free flour mix for this recipe. Whatever type of sifter you have, the finer the sifter, obviously the better. If you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there's some large pieces of rice in here, and they don't go through. So it's really good to get those big pieces of rice if you want a nice cakey consistency. If you're making something like corn muffins, then just leave the larger grains in there, and it will actually add to the consistency of a corn muffin because you want it to be a little crispy and crunchier. Alright. Then you want to take a whisk after the gluten-free flours and the starches are together, and you want to just whisk it together so that the starches aren't separate. Now we're going to make the crumbs for the crumb cake, and what you need is 3/4 of a cup of pre-mixed gluten-free flour that we just made, 1/4 teaspoon of xanthan gum, doesn't want to come out, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I use sea salt, 1/2 cup of brown sugar. I use organic brown sugar, cup, and 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, quarter cup of dairy-free shortening. What I normally use for that is coconut oil, virgin coconut oil. It's a lot healthier for you. I'm going to use half a cup for the 1/4 of a cup. You want to put that in a separate mixing bowl or container, because this is going to have to go in the refrigerator. In the winter, this coconut oil would be hard like a rock and really white and look like lard or shortening. In the summer, it is just total liquid and a lot easier to deal with. A lot of the recipes for gluten-free baking, if you use coconut oil, do say to melt it. And in the summer, it is just usually pre-melted for you in your home, right in your pantry. And then after you mix this, it's going to go right into the refrigerator for a little while, at least a half an hour, so that the coconut oil firms up. Because as soon as the coconut oil goes into the refrigerator, it's going to start getting firm. So the crumbs are in the refrigerator for the crumb topping, and I preheated the oven to 350 degrees. Right now, with just the minusing of the flour for the crumbs and a little bit extra, which I used for extra crumbs, there's 2 cups left in here of gluten-free flour mix. And that's where we'll start for this part of the cake recipe. Then we want to add a 1/2 teaspoon of xanthan gum and a teaspoon of baking powder, which is here. A teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt, which again, I usually go a little bit light on the salt. You do want that salt though to cut through the sweetness of the dessert. It really makes we've done it a few times, we've left it out, and it just doesn't taste right if it doesn't have the salt in there. a cup of vanilla vegan yogurt, and I'm going to do the wet ingredients in a separate container. The yogurt that I use, it says vanilla vegan yogurt. I use vanilla coconut yogurt. It's so delicious. It is very sweet though, and for that reason especially I cut the sugar in the recipe too, in the original recipe that I had gotten. There we go. And a teaspoon of cider vinegar. I usually use raw apple cider vinegar. And half a cup of dairy-free, soy-free vegetable shortening, which again I just use the coconut oil because it is just like shortening, the general idea of it. So half a cup of that. And oh, by the way, if you put the coconut oil into the cold ingredient, which the coconut yogurt was in the refrigerator, it will get the coconut oil to solidify a little bit, but don't worry about it. It'll mix very well in the cake mix. And a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So then I normally take the wet ingredients separately, and I'll whisk them together really well so that everything's incorporated. I forgot something. Then we're going to take a tablespoon of energy egg replacer, and we're going to mix it with a 1/4 cup of rice milk or any other non-dairy milk. Then you just mix up the egg replacer with the rice milk. Make sure it's nice and dissolved in there, and that can get added to the wet ingredients. Something that I didn't mention was the sugar we need to add. You can add that to the dry ingredients or the wet ingredients. It says in here actually goes in the wet ingredients. I like to put in the dry ingredients, so a little more than a half a cup, or just a little slight, or a half a cup would be fine actually also. And whisk that together, the dry ingredients, then whisk the wet ingredients, and then you just add, this is going to be very thick, you add the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients. And this rice flour, I find you don't want to overmix it really. I'm going to try to get this as quickly together as I can, and it almost looks like a muffin batter. It's pretty thick batter. And because this dough, you could use a spoon or you could use your fingers, because it's nice and it's moist too, but it's
thick.
It's
Clumpy.
No. No. It has a lot of coconut oil, so it won't stick to your hands at all.
Oh.
Okay, then you take the crumbs from the refrigerator that were in the refrigerator, and you can see they did solidify a little bit more. One day I left this in there a little too long, and I couldn't get it out of the cup. So be careful you don't leave it in the refrigerator too long. I'm going to steal one of the muffins because I forgot to tell you guys, leave just a little bit of the batter behind to mix with the crumbs. But otherwise the crumbs have a rough consistency with the sugar. So I just mix one of the muffins, which is like about 1/4 cup of the batter. And then you just place the crumbs on top of the muffins, and you see those nice high liners really keep the crumbs on top. The recipe, the original recipe called for a 325-degree oven, but because I'm making muffins, I just put it up at 350, and we just bake it for 15 to 20 minutes. I find like 20 minutes, 25 minutes at the top will get them nice and firm. Show them to you when they come out of the oven.